Hello. Welcome to Some Idiot with a Wrench. My name's Dalton, and I'm the Dingleberry Chief around here. Some might say the Dingle Chief. Today, instead of me working on the Chevelle, finishing the video I'm halfway through with it right now, or finishing the super cool video that I've got going on my Ford, instead I'm going to give you guys a talking head video. I'm a little bit sick, and it's a lot a bit cold. So I've been mainlining Mucinex and snorting nasal spray for the last 6 hours, trying to pump myself full of enough chemicals to at least make this possible. So I hope you enjoy it. Today, we're going to talk about classic cars, specifically some pro tips for those of you out there who are trying to get into classic cars for the first time. I have owned, dailied, operated, and been involved with old rusty pieces of shit for the last 10 years in some way, shape, or form. I've had this yellow Chevelle behind me for 10 years. So I've at least got like a little bit of knowledge and understanding about how owning these cars goes and the way to handle them, way to handle this journey with the most amount of fun. I'm not going to say success, but fun. So here we go. Tip number one, make sure that you buy a car that you really, really fucking love. I think that is the most important piece of all of this, is to make sure that you've got a ride that you're actually really excited about. It's got to pass the look back test. What's the look back test? Well, when you get to the liquor store or the gas station or wherever you happen to take your vehicle, if you get out of it and you walk in to wherever you drove to and you don't spend at least half of that walk looking behind you at the car as you walk away from it, you bought the wrong car, bud. You've got to love it, right? That's what makes this fun, is that you get to own and drive and be a part of the story of a vehicle that you are absolutely in love with. That's what's going to give you the motivation and the passion to like make it cool and make it yours, is that you really love whatever it is that you're working on. That's number one. Not that it's cool, not that it's what's in style on TikTok or whatever the fuck at the moment. It's that you actually, for you, love the vehicle that you're working on. There are some addendums to this pro tip. I think the biggest one being, make sure that it's a car that you love that has got at least some sort of parts availability for you wherever you happen to live. If you're in the States, that means avoiding imports like the Eurotrash stuff or like JDM stuff prior to like the late 80s, when they really started to take over the US markets, because your parts availability is going to be super low and it's going to be very hard for you to keep that car on the road. So that's the biggest addendum there. Make sure it's something that you really, really love or are excited to own, and you're going to be able to find the stuff you need to keep it moving. Keep her moving. Tip number two, do as much of the work and the maintenance as you can yourself. If you don't know what you're doing, that's fine. They made YouTube for that. They've also got manuals for everything. The Chilton manual. There's another company, right, that makes new manuals for old cars. You can also find like old maintenance and repair manuals for pretty much anything up until like the early 2000s is when things started to get really proprietary and locked down. Read the book, watch a YouTube video, subscribe here. Sometimes I do half-ass tutorials, right? Shameless plug. But do as much of it yourself as you possibly can. It's going to be rewarding and you're going to learn stuff. You're going to pick up new skills. I am not a classically trained mechanic. I didn't go to school for this. I am 100% self-taught and YouTube certified. This last spring, I tore this motor in the Chevelle all the way down to the block and left the lower rotating assembly alone, but I put brand new heads and a cam and an intake in it, right? That's not an amateur job. That's not a beginner job, but I did it. Granted, I had help, but still, right? That's something I couldn't have done 5 years ago, but I did it and the car runs and drives and it's great. Ignore that it's up on a jack stand right now. And that's just the evolution, right? Keep realistic expectations. Don't think that you can go from not knowing how to do anything to building a 383 in your garage on a shoestring budget, right? Be realistic with your skill set and where you're at, but do it yourself. Learn and grow. That's part of the journey. That's part of the fun. That's honestly one of the funnest parts about owning English, Dalton, owning cool old classic cars is like learning how they work and how to make them work better and how to keep them on the road. So do as much of your maintenance and repairs and upgrades as you can yourself. Tip number 3, keep it drivable. This is, I think, the number one trap that people fall into when they start to get into classic cars, more so than like 90s JDM stuff or modding modern cars. This is something I feel like people specifically in like the muscle car era and earlier crowd fall into, is they think everything needs a frame up, rotisserie, nuts and bolts restoration. I can't tell you how many people have told me to frame off my C10, to even the Galaxy, which is not a good candidate for that anyway. The Chevelle, which is minty fresh, has got no rust, has got no big issues. I've had like if I had a dime for every time somebody told me to frame off resto that, I could probably buy at least 2 dinners worth of Big Macs from McDonald's. Okay? Don't do that, right? That kind of project is for a very specific kind of person, and that specific kind of person is a rich fucking person, right? You don't want to be like this guy, or this guy who have bought a car, probably never drove it, probably never enjoyed it, and started a frame off resto and realized, oh shit, this is really fucking expensive. Not only is it really fucking expensive, but I'm dumping all this money and work into this car that I've never driven, that I don't get any enjoyment out of. That's just this big draw on their life, right? And they end up selling the project at a massive loss on Facebook Marketplace. My loss, your gain is a very common line you see in these Facebook ads when it comes to this stuff. Don't fall into that trap. Don't do it. Keep it drivable. Pro tip number 4 or 3, 4. I've already lost count. Daily your project, daily your classic. You don't have to daily it every day, and it doesn't have to be your daily for years and years and years, but you should daily it. You should run it, drive it for an appreciable amount of distance. I'm so fucking smart. Like you should put a decent amount of miles on it every week, in my opinion. And this is going to tell you a couple things. One, it's going to give you a much better idea on what you actually want to modify or improve with your vehicle. You might think that you want to do a big turbo or engine swap for an LS or whatever, and you might realize that you would actually prefer some better suspension and like a retrofit AC system first. Right? It's gonna give you insights into what the car actually needs to be an enjoyable ride for you, not just for what Instagram thinks the best build or best mods are, right? It is also going to give you some insight into what the baseline for your vehicle is. And what I mean by that is when you really understand how the car drives normally, you're going to know when things are going wrong. If the sounds are bad, if the sounds it's making aren't normal, if they're bad, if things are getting ready to break, you will have that ingrained sense or bond with the machine that you're owning and operating. My grandpa, for a long time in the 50s and the 60s, owned a John Deere dealership and did a lot of maintenance and repair on farm equipment and stuff. And it was his mantra that a machine that was used regularly and by the same operator would outlast by 3 or 4 times like a piece of machinery or a vehicle that was in a fleet, right? that a bunch of different users or operators were hopping into and out of, because they never really had enough time to get in sync with the machine and realize what was an unusual noise, what was a bad noise, right? But especially before you start doing big projects, big deals, you need to know like what the baseline for your car is. It's going to help push off a lot of headaches in the long run, and you get to be the cool guy at the office because you drove a Chevelle or a Galaxy into work instead of a cookie cutter JDM Econobox. So there you go. And then finally, my last tip is to go to shows, go to events, meet other car people, right? I go to Power Tour every year, which is a 5-day rolling car show road trip thing. They're usually about 3,000 miles. I've gone for the last 2 years. I took the Chevelle. I took my daily driver C10. It's awesome. You get to be around a bunch of people that are all into the same kind of shit you are. They get it, right? You don't have to explain to them why you dropped $400 on a fancy new carburetor, or why you decided to go with this cam and not that cam, or why you even drive something that's 50 years old and gets 12 miles to the gallon. Like, they all get it, right? And it's cool. It's a really awesome sense of community. You get to see cool cars, get ideas for maybe what you want to do with your next build. You get to show off what you've put so much time and money and effort into over the last however much time, right? Which is awesome. It's fun. It's what it's all about, right? So I guess just to recap, pick something that you love that passes the look back test with parts availability, right? As long as it doesn't break the bank. Do as much as you can with it yourself. Keep it drivable. Daily it to some degree. And then go to shows and car events and stuff. If you want to have fun and not break the bank and have success in old cars, this is the way that I've found that brings me the most enjoyment with it, right? The way to do it properly, at least as far as money spent versus fun had, miles per gallon. Those are my pro tips. But anyway, sorry, you guys don't get to see me wrenching on this or doing something cool with that, or even cooler with this, or finally starting this engine build. Life is life, right? So this is what you get. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, drop a like or a subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And I will see you guys in my next video. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your evening. I will see you next time.